Hey, welcome. So, we hear this term inclusive education thrown around all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? Well, it's really all about a huge shift in how we think. Instead of trying to make a child fit into a school, the whole idea is to make the school fit the child. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what that looks like. And this quote just nails the problem perfectly. Think about it. We would never expect one single t-shirt size to fit every kid in a classroom, right? It would be baggy on some and way too tight on others. So why on earth do we expect a single lesson plan to work for everyone? For some students, that lesson is sagging with boredom, and for others, it's pinching with frustration. For a kid like Trevor, that one-size-fits-all shirt is pinching, and it's pinching hard. The classroom is asking him to do something that just highlights what he struggles with. It makes him feel completely exposed and, well, stupid, even though he totally gets the story. And then you have Leslie. Now, the system is trying to help her, but how does it do it? By pulling her aside, separating her, and all that does is make her feel different and not in a good way. She's not really part of the group. She's always on the outside looking in, constantly reminded of what makes her different. Or take Danny. For him, the standard classroom just has no room for what's happening in his life outside of school. He's got these huge worries on his mind that a rigid lesson plan just can't account for. So the problem isn't that he can't learn, the problem is the classroom can't see him as a whole person. So you see the pattern here, right? Trevor, Leslie, and Danny, they are not the problem. The real problem is the one-size-fits-all system that they're just trying to survive in. And that leads us to the alternative, which is a whole different way of thinking. Inclusive education isn't just about letting every kid through the school doors. It's a promise. It's a commitment to designing a place where every single student has an equal and, just as important, an equitable shot at reaching their absolute full potential. The goal isn't to change the kid for the school. It's to change the school for the kid. Okay, so how do we actually do that? Well, the main strategy is something called differentiated instruction. And I love the phrase on this slide, shaking up the classroom. It's all about being flexible, getting creative, and offering lots of different paths to get to the same destination. It's the practical toolkit we use to build that inclusive classroom. But to really get on board with this, we have to go even deeper than just classroom techniques. It means we have to completely rethink how we see disability and diversity in the first place. And to do that, we kind of have to understand where our old ideas came from. Our modern push for inclusion is really just the latest step on a very long and often very dark road. For centuries, being different was met with fear or ridicule or just being locked away. So this modern shift toward inclusion, it's a huge, radical break from the past. It's about seeing disability not as some kind of flaw, but as a natural part of what makes us human. And this slide just lays out the core battle of ideas perfectly. You have the old medical model, which basically says the problem is you. You need to be fixed. But then you have the revolutionary social model. It says the problem isn't the person in the wheelchair, the problem is the staircase. Inclusive education is built 100% on this social model. The barrier isn't the student, it's the inflexible school. Okay, so we've got the big philosophy down. But what does this actually look like on, say, a Tuesday morning in a real classroom? Let's dive in. A differentiated classroom is not chaos. Far from it. It's this dynamic, flowing process. You see how it moves between the whole class working together, then breaking into smaller groups, and then individual work. The teacher is kind of like an orchestra conductor, right? They're bringing different sections in at different times to create this really rich harmony of learning. So how in the world does a teacher manage all this? Well, this is an amazing tool called the equalizer. Think of it like the mixing board in a recording studio. For any lesson, a teacher can slide these dials up or down for different students. One student might need a really simple, concrete task, while another is totally ready for something complex and abstract. It's all about custom fitting the challenge to the learner. So let's circle back to Trevor. In a classroom like this, his teacher looks for his strengths, and it turns out he's a kinesthetic learner. He learns by doing. So instead of forcing him to read out loud, the teacher has him act out the story while another student reads it. And just like that, his strength becomes the way into tackling his weakness. He starts connecting his understanding to the words on the page, and he's building confidence instead of shame. It's a total game changer. Now, this is amazing for Trevor. But a single incredible teacher, no matter how skilled they are, can't fix this whole problem by themselves. The real barriers to inclusion are often way, way bigger than just one classroom. This quote really gets to the heart of it. We're not just fighting against a lack of good intentions. We're fighting against these deeply embedded systems that actively push back against change. Exclusion isn't an accident. It's woven into the very fabric of how we've built our educational structures. It really is a stubborn foe. And it is so stubborn. Get this, way back in 1994, governments all over the world signed the Salamanca Statement, promising to create inclusive schools. And yet, here we are, over 25 years later, and that promise is still just a promise in so many places. The progress has been painfully slow. So why is it so slow? Well, because the barriers are systemic. We have government policies that actually contradict each other. We have this obsession with standardized tests that punish kids who learn differently. And we have this underlying belief that, well, some students are just meant to be left behind by the system. Fixing this means we have to transform the entire educational machine, from the very top all the way down. Now this is where we have to reframe the entire conversation. This isn't just about a new educational policy. This is a social justice movement. It's about fundamental human rights. The fight for true inclusion belongs in the exact same category as these other historic struggles for equality. It might seem radical to some people right now, but it is absolutely on the right side of history. So we end right back where we started, with this one fundamental question. It all comes back to that simple idea of the ill-fitting clothes. The takeaway here is crystal clear. We have to stop trying to change the child to fit the school. The real challenge for all of us is to demand and to build schools that are truly tailored to fit the brilliant diversity of every single child.